Yeah.
Right. Let's go and do the next thing, which I think everyone, and I know when I talk about freezing coffee with people, the biggest thing is process and efficiencies of process. Um, no matter where it is in coffee, it's definitely something that I obsess about big time in terms of our processes and how inefficient we are in coffee in doing things. And because this is such a new process in terms of freezing coffee. I'd love to kind of understand everyone's approach to that process and kind of thinking about labor costs of spending hours in pre-portioning all of our coffees and actually looking at manual versus what equipment is actually available to make this a little bit more efficient and how we kind of value that, especially in the cafe side of things. Do we need to kind of factor in an extra labor cost on top of the coffees in terms of how we price coffees in that sense? But I'd love to know everyone's kind of process and their techniques and maybe is it taking them too long or longer than they would think? There's some insights I think for people into best practice that we know of right now would be amazing. I don't know who wants to kind of jump in there to start with.
I can start. Um, it's very tedious to vacuum seal kilograms of coffee at a time, especially if it's, say, for example, a filter coffee where your dose might be anywhere between 15 and 20 grams, perhaps even lower. So obviously, when you have a lower dose, it'll take you longer to use up a kilo of coffee when you're vacuum sealing it, which takes an incredibly long time. And right now, for everything that I do at Sub-Zero, it is all vacuum sealed. And I think the process it's worked really well, but the process is probably one of the main reasons why I actually want to get out of vacuum sealing, because it takes so damn long. And when I started just before December, I'd be pulling, I'd be in at a friend's restaurant using his vacuum sealer for 35 hours a week. And it was mind numbing. It was worth it in the end, don't get me wrong, because it's still all there. But, and granted, I had to do a lot more at that time because we're building a whole menu, but the process is really, really inefficient. And then when you add on to that, the use of plastics, and we do recycle where we can the soft plastics and reuse as well, because obviously we want to minimize our waste. But if we could going on to the sort of where we were talking about before, the nitrogen flushing, if I envision a process with that, and it's by no means, it's not established yet, but if we had a process where it was kind of like a car tire, where you had a hose and you attached it to your vial, and then you had a way of knowing when it was fully flushed, then you could just move on. So I feel like that would be a lot quicker than waiting. And as you said, John, you're waiting sometimes 35 seconds for a cycle of vacuum seals, which might get 2, 3, 4 doses of coffee at a time. Surely there's much quicker ways of doing it. And I just don't think vacuum sealing is going to be the most efficient way in the future. As good as it's been for now, I don't think it's the most efficient way.
Yeah. Anyone else want to touch on their process as current and the kind of time it's taking?
We at the moment, what we've found is we're doing vacuum sealing. It's taking us around about 30 to 40 minutes per kilo. And that's another benefit of the tubes, is that's about 8 to 10 minutes per kilo to freeze. So the tubes are definitely helping make that a lot more efficient. But then probably one of the advantages of having the vacuum pack does take up less room in the freezer. The tubes obviously do take up more and more freezer space, which, like I said, probably an issue. That was probably one of the beautiful things about that photo, because you just showed us with the prawns. Is that's, as I said, the reality for us here, we don't have enough freezer space to have it wherever we can find it. So I think like vacuum packing does take a lot more time, and obviously labour is getting more and more expensive all the time. But there is still one advantage of that vacuum pack, whether it was plastic or maybe silicone, that does help reduce freezer space. I think especially if you're looking to get into freezing green beans and freezing larger quantities at a time, you obviously need to have a lot more freezer space for that. So I think probably for your larger quantities, I can see vacuum packing maybe should be an option there.
Yeah. Ben, any thoughts? How do you guys kind of deal with it at Monogram?
We're in a similar boat as everyone else. The one thing the other issue with backpack is is making sure you have strong enough material. Like sometimes with some coffees, if the vacuum is set too high, it can blow seals on things, or something that looks like it was properly sealed. You go to the freezer and you find all these like really soft bags. That's the biggest issue that I personally have with backpacking, is that unless you have like a big leak on it, you often don't know that your seal was compromised until you've had that coffee frozen for a week or so. But I think we're in the same boat. That's sort of a high labor operation. We think it's sort of, for us, the labor is sort of worth it from an experience standpoint, but it's definitely giving me pause to think about like more of the tube style sealing.
Yeah. And question for everyone: is everyone manually weighing out, I'm assuming, set of scales and just pouring off into the yeah. I can imagine.
Good so far.
I from my perspective anyway, with all of the stuff that all my prep I was doing for comp, I had the advantage of having one of the Akea Orion doses, and I was doing hundreds and hundreds of packs in a very short space of time. So it definitely was a bonus. I know those kind of things are not super affordable, but at the same time not overly expensive either. I'm kind of hoping after this week, Kirk, as you know, you've got one of those coming to you to play around with, and some containers as well, to kind of see the change in that process and see if it does kind of help. But it's definitely something. It's definitely something that we could look at, and maybe when we look at the nitrogen flushing options and things like that, maybe there's something that we can take from the capsule side of our industry, and something worth looking at developing a smaller kind of version of those kind of capsule machines to be able to do this dosing could be something quite interesting, I think.
Yeah, it's actually just brought back some memories. I remember doing a bunch of testing on argon, nitrogen, CO2 with a range of coffees and a range of roast dates, and preferred flavor-wise just no flush consistently. Yeah. It's just interesting. There's so much to test, but and repeated it over and over, and tasted argon and CO2 flushing bags and nitrous, and they had edge, and they had what felt like different characteristics that the coffee that was just vacuum sealed didn't have. So I don't know if you guys anyone's ever tried that, a range of side by sides, but
you can't provide
that was in 2018. Yeah, testing that stuff. Yeah. Anyway, food for thought.
Yeah.